It's a multi-billion-dollar dairy deal. Cream on top of a great year for farmers, if they buy in. Fonterra is selling off brands and assets built up over generations.
It's not about waving a white flag, it's about unleashing the business that we're left with.
What might happen if they drop the anchor from Fonterra?
Pushing up to $3 billion range is roughly where we sit.
It's a very big number.
But are farmer shareholders ready to sell?
I'm pretty disappointed.
No, it's not the right time.
They should have done it 20 years ago.
Look, better late than never.
The right deal at the right price promises a huge financial windfall.
Imagine thousands of people across New Zealand and provincial towns and beyond, all of them winning Lotto Division 1 in the same week and sharing in a prize pool worth billions of dollars. Imagine the impact of that. That's what's at stake here.
This is the Mainland Deal. Milk, butter, cheese and yoghurt, they're pantry staples. These brands pretty much own the chillers here in New Zealand and sell well in Australia and beyond. But the dairy co-op no longer wants to own them.
So Fonterra wants to sell off all of its Australian business, and yet we're not in Victoria or Tasmania. We're in South Auckland, where they make fresh and fruity and a lot of other things.
Basically their entire Australian operation is on the block. Large amounts of Southeast Asia, all of Sri Lanka, and 3 big plants in New Zealand.
Since news of the deal broke in May 2024, Riley Kennedy's been covering every twist and turn for Business Desk.
It comes with $4.9 billion in revenue.
Why would you want to sell all of that?
Because they've never been very good at doing it. Best way to describe this is it's assets in Australia bundled in with New Zealand consumer brands to make it look pretty. In fact, someone described it to me as a big fat question mark as to why we're even in Australia. That was someone in Fonterra.
It's been a problem child for them.
As a senior analyst for Forsyth Barr, Matt Montgomery has been diving into Fonterra's Australian operations.
The business does nearly $5 billion in revenue. It does roughly $200 million in EBIT, earnings before interest and tax. So that's a margin of 4%. If you look around the world at sort of global consumer dairy companies, a 4% EBIT margin is not great, would be what I'd say, to put it bluntly. If you look at Fonterra's ingredients and food service businesses, standalone, you're far superior returns on capital than that of Mainland Group. So I've been investing in it for some time, but they've finally decided to fly the white flag.
At Fonterra, that's fighting talk.
It's not about waving a white flag, it's about saying we're going to go harder and faster on new areas.
Miles Hurrell called this shot. The Fonterra chief executive has been on a mission to simplify the business since he took over the co-op in 2019.
It starts with what we're good at. The core focus for us is there's a perishable product that comes out of a cow at 4:30 in the morning. It's got to be picked up that day and done something with, and if you don't, ultimately there's value that's destroyed very, very quickly, not to mention the environment if it goes down a drain, of course. And so we got to a point maybe a decade or so ago we were chasing milk offshore. We did a lot of farming in some of our offshore markets, whether it be Brazil or Chile, whether that be in China. And some of the farmers probably thought, is that in the best interest of what's important to me, collecting and processing my milk and giving me the best return? And so now we're focused back on the core cooperative here in New Zealand. That's where I think the sentiment from farmers have come back to say, yeah, we like where the strategy's heading.
We're off to dairy country to check that sentiment, and on the way there,
If anyone's looking for a sign of how this could work, well, there's one on the Southern Motorway every time you head south.
in 2019, Fonterra sold Tiptop to Freneri, the world's #2 ice cream maker. It lifted earnings.
From roughly $20 million a year to close to 50 in a space of 5 years, and revenue's been similarly growing quite strongly.
So how was that possible?
Ultimately, you've gone from a big beast in Fonterra to a new owner whose expertise is selling ice cream around the world. That's not really Fonterra's expertise. Their expertise is taking milk, drying it, putting it in bags and selling it.
But we're not just talking trumpets here. Tiptop was a $380 million deal. Remember, Mainland could be $3 billion, with brands literally etched on farmers going back generations.
So, I know the grandson of the guy that's where the Anchor brand came from, Henry Reynolds. And it was his shepherd that had a tattoo of an anchor on his shoulder, and that's where the Anchor brand comes from.
True story.
Yeah.
On Lloyd Downing's Morrinsville farm, they've dried off the herd for winter.
Yeah, well, I'm 77, but it's about, I've sort of milked cows for 50 years, yeah. But they don't ring me before 7 now, and they don't ask me to milk.
You're dried off as well.
Yeah, yeah. But it's better to be a good old has-been than never was it.
Lloyd's not shy. He made world headlines protesting about another former local, Jacinda Ardern. What does he make of the Mainland Deal?
I'm pretty disappointed. They should have done it 20 years ago. They should have set up a separate company and allowed farmers to invest in it. And a group of us tried before it was even set up to do a structure like that. The cooperative Taliban took over and wouldn't allow that to happen, to split the company.
The Taliban, crikey, you're not mincing words.
No, well, that's what I think. I mean, it's cost us a lot of money, mate.
Let's feed that back to Fonterra.
And I was chatting to a farmer who said, well, we tried all this, the cooperative Taliban stopped it from getting through.
Well, I won't comment on past leadership, but as I said...
That might have been a comment on shareholders, I think.
Right, okay. But like all these things, there's always a lot on your plate, and where do you put your energy as a senior executive team and as a board? Where do you put your team, your energy that's going to give you your best value back for your shareholders in the long term? And so while it's come up as a conversation, it's not been the time for us to put the effort into it. But as I say, now we believe it is, and therefore let's focus and go hard after it.
And politicians talk about political capital. They probably had a lot of political capital amongst their farmers, and so it made sense for them to go now and work their way through the process.
It's not something where Miles would have rolled over one morning and woken up and gone, oh, wonder what we do with the consumer or Australian businesses. This has been a sort of a challenging area of Fonterra's business for some time. So, yeah, for sure, some would argue it's overdue.
Gary Reimer couldn't agree more. The Cambridge dairyman knows winning with those consumer brands would take more investment.
I would hate to have been a Fonterra director if you had to stand up in front of a shareholder meeting, say in 15 and 16 when we had a $4 payout, and say, oh, there's a 50-cent dividend, but you're not getting it because we're going to sink it back into brand development, so you can live with your $3.90. They wouldn't have got out of a meeting alive. So, those sort of tensions were just never going to work.
Splitting off the brands fixes a problem for Fonterra. Job one is getting the maximum payout for farmer shareholders for the milk they supply. The same milk then costs Fonterra brands more to use in products, facing stiff competition at the supermarket. For one business to do well, the other has to struggle.
Yeah, I just don't see a fit with consumers, so it doesn't worry me. And we'll still sell milk. There's those businesses will still want milk or ingredients.
Fonterra sold Tiptop with an agreement to still supply the milk for those trumpets and tubs of ice cream. Mainland Group could do the same deal.
If you go down a trade sale route for a start, the potential buyer of that, whoever it may be, is going to be a very, very large customer of ours on day one. 7% of our milk is a significant amount of milk and becomes a very, very large customer on day one.
Fonterra insists it's also looking at listing the Mainland Group.
Oh yeah, we're going absolutely hard on the dual track. So a trade sale being one and an IPO. And the reason to do both is that the IPO is a significant amount of work to get yourself into a position to take a business to market to do an initial public offering.
I wouldn't put money on an IPO. It may end up going to a large overseas dairy company.
Who's going to buy it?
Lactalis, which is the big French entity, were named as a bidder formally by essentially the Australian version of the Commerce Commission. So they're in.
A Japanese company, an American private equity firm.
Bega, sort of banging on the door. They're an Australian dairy company which Fonterra has the licence to market their cheese, somewhat controversially. They're banging on the door saying, let us in.
That a trade sale would be more likely. We've published sort of a $2.5 to $3 billion range.
If it's circa $3 billion, which is what they're talking about, that's $2 a share. I assume the Fonterra will keep some of that for reinvestment in the ingredient stuff. If $1 comes back, I'd say that, in my gut feel would say that's probably it.
Speaking frankly, what would it mean for you here? Have you done the numbers?
Well, we have 250,000 shares, so
yeah.
250 grand.
What are we talking?
Well, it's about 400,000.
That's a lotto win basically, isn't it?
Yeah, $2 a share. Well, that's what they told us. And how many farmers are going to walk away from that? I mean, I'm 77 and I've got a lot of mates of the same age, and they're going to take it and run.
Miles Hurrell hopes they get to vote on a deal before Christmas.
Do you need like a simple majority, or is it going to be a super majority?
It's a simple majority, but that also tells a story. That if you're getting 50% plus a tickle up, it doesn't really give you the mandate or the endorsement. So we'd be seeking something from our farmer shareholders that give us the strong support that we want to go forward with this. And then you think about some of those advanced ingredients that we sell into the medical nutrition space or the sports and active lifestyles, and we're only really scratching the surface at the moment, and having an organisation that's solely focused on those two channels, all your innovation spend goes in behind it. Thinking about your sustainability spend, where do those B2B customers, where do they want us to focus around sustainability? I think the future's really bright.